Hello everyone, Chris Whitten here. Glad to be back with you this week. So for this week's video, I'm going to make this a two-part video because it's be kind of a long story, and I've been bad about putting out 20 and 30-minute videos, and I don't think anybody really wants to sit and listen to me drone on for half an hour. So I'm going to try to break this up a little bit. The last couple of weeks, I've gotten 4 or 5 messages. People have sent me, I guess it's going around as a reel on TikTok and Facebook and all that, some old video footage of Cody Johnson playing, and I've had several people, longtime friends and stuff, that didn't realize I played with Cody, I guess, and I've had people sending me that video going, "Hey man, is that you playing fiddle?" And yeah, that is. So anyway, I wanted to tell a little bit about how I met Cody Johnson and the time that I spent working with him there for a couple of years and working on his first records and all that. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So whenever I was first introduced to Cody Johnson as an artist, I actually worked on his first record before I ever met him. A friend of mine, we had been in the Kevin Fowler band together. It's actually Kevin's first lead guitar player he hired a few months after I went to work for him. A guy by the name of Keith Davis, incredibly talented guy, I love him to death. At that point in time, he had gotten a degree for jazz guitar there at North Texas State University in Denton. He was getting more and more involved in producing and doing studio work and all that. Was more interested, kind of more in the Americana singer-songwriter style of music that he was really focused on and experienced with at that point. He'd learned lap steel and a few other instruments like that, so he was actually out on the road working for Eli Young Band at that point with Mike Eli and those guys. I'll never forget, this was about 6 months after I left Fowler. I get a phone call, and at that point in time I had been just kind of filling in here and there. I'd been working with several guys, Jared Birmingham, and a little bit with Jason Allen, and some gigs with the Ace in the Hole guys, George Strait's band. And I was living in San Marcos, so I get a phone call from Keith one day, and this was early September. I want to say it was right after Labor Day. He called me and said, "Hey man, I've got a project. I need some fiddle work done on it." Said the album's 95% done, and if I remember correctly, I believe he told me the only thing he had left to do was to overdub fiddle and B3 organ on there. So I said, "Okay, cool, man." He said, "This kid is really good. He's from Huntsville. He's a prison guard over there. He's only 20 years old, but he's really good. He's a great songwriter. He's a great singer, has a great attitude, all the things." He said, "I think I can't wait for you to hear it." So, okay, awesome. So they were using a studio out in Wimberley there in the hill country, kind of southwest of Austin there. I got up the next day, headed on out there. We did the session, and I was immediately impressed. I was impressed with his writing. I was impressed with his singing. Keith and I were the only ones in the studio that day. So I did not meet Cody at that point. So we did the record. I didn't even hear the finished mixed product, which is not uncommon. A lot of times I've played on records that, I was listening to the radio and I heard it and I thought, wow, that song sounds familiar. I always remember that session in particular because we recorded that the day after I found out that I was going to be a father for the first time. I found out that my son was on the way. Fast forward to that next spring, we actually relocated to Houston. My ex-wife was from the Houston area, so we decided it'd be, nice to be closer to family with the baby on the way and everything. And I was looking to just make a living and stay a little closer to home than what I had been. Part of the reason I had left Kevin was just being completely burned out and have lupus, and I was having some health issues at that point. It was just getting to be a struggle to keep up with everything, and I was looking to just kind of get plugged into the Houston scene. Of course, I knew a lot of cats in the Houston music scene and everything, but just kind of trying to get up and running, I guess you might say. But I believe it was around April, and I found out that Cody was looking for a fiddle player, and they had a gig coming up. So I reached out and heard back from his friend Shane Jennings. Shane's a super nice guy and later became a good friend. And Shane was trying to help do some booking and business management for Cody at that point in time. So Shane sent me all the finished album, what had not been released yet. They were preparing for the release and getting ready for a CD release party there in Huntsville at a venue there. And at the moment, the name of that venue slips my mind. I played it a million times, but it'll come to me. Anyhow, and that was the gig. The gig was a couple of weeks out, and they were looking for a fiddle player, at least for that gig. They felt it was important. I said, sure, man, I'd love to do it. So he sent me the tracks. I went back and listened to them and basically had to relearn the songs or relearn the parts that I had played on the album. Come time for the gig, I headed on up to Huntsville to play the show. I showed up at sound check, and that was actually the first time I met Cody. You know, at that point, I still didn't have a real good understanding of who Cody was. Obviously, we had not met before that. But musically, I didn't really understand who he was. A lot of that had to do with the sound of that record. Looking back on it, and this is nobody's fault, and like I said, I think Keith is super talented, and I love him to death. But like I said, he was more into the singer-songwriter and Americana stuff, and Cody was more of straight-ahead country, 90s country, honky-tonk, that sort of thing. And he was more Chris Ledoux than Robert Earl Keen. But the record, I don't feel like really represented who Cody was, or the live show, or his energy, or any of that, as well as it could have. At soundcheck, it started to dawn on me, what Cody was about, musically and everything else. And of course, we played the gig that night. He had so much energy on stage. He was a great entertainer. And it was kind of funny to me also, I'll never forget, he was the first person to really make me feel like an old man in this business. Obviously, at the time, I was 28. Cody was 20, I believe. He said, I used to always come see you guys when you were with Fowler at like the Washington County Fair and some of the different fairs and festivals around there. And he said, I've been watching you a whole life, and I love to see you do Devil Went Down to Georgia, and how, the energy and all that sort of stuff. And I thought, wow, I'm only 28, and you've been watching me your whole life? What in the world, But he went on to tell me that, I think he said he was around 12 years old, 10 or 12 years old, the first time he had seen us. That night we talked a little bit, and he said he had a little private roping event coming up that he was playing for, and wanted to know if I'd play for that as well. And I said, yeah, man. I said, I'm looking to stay close to home. Baby's due any day, and I just, I need to work, obviously, and but I don't want to be out on the road. I don't want to be gone away from the house so much, and I'll be out for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. So it's perfect. So we started working together and played quite a few gigs throughout the summer. And I would go up to Huntsville. Most of his gigs were pretty close to home around there. And at the time, he lived in a trailer house just outside of Huntsville, there on the north side of town. And I remember that place very well. It had a kind of a big wooden deck on the front of it. And usually if I went up there and played like that, a lot of times I would just spend the night and drive home the next morning. We would get together after the gig. We'd go out there to the house and sit around on the deck and just jam and play music and talk. And there were a couple of times that I set up. We kind of outlasted everybody, and Cody and I just sit there and talked until 4 or 5 in the morning, talking about the music business, about our influences, about music in general, about what his dreams and aspirations were, and how he wanted to get out of the prison, quit working over there and everything. So we had a lot of really good times and good conversations sitting on that porch around that time. Fast forward to August, went ahead and released the first single, which is a song called Texas Kinda Way. He hired the radio promoter Rick Hogan out of Nashville. So, and I told Cody right off the bat, I said, Cody, I've seen a lot of guys make this mistake that they're like, I'm paying this radio promoter, however much money, usually at least $1,200 to $1,500 and sometimes more than that. And they just had the feeling that, okay, well, I'm paying him to get me on the radio, so, I'm not going to pick up the phone and call anybody. And I said, you can't be that way, man. You've got to reach out, especially being a brand new artist. You've got to start forging relationships with the program directors or the PDs at all the radio stations. They need to know who you are. So he started doing that, and he was very disciplined about it. At the time, like I said, where he was working there at the prison in Huntsville, and his job was taking work crews out. They would take these work crews out to pick up trash or whatever, and he would sit on horseback with a shotgun. Start early in the morning, and as best I recall, I believe his shift was like 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. But as soon as he'd get home, after that, he would spend an hour or two on the phone calling all these radio stations. And whenever you do that, every week when the charts come out, the radio promoter will send you a lead sheet. It has all of the program directors, all of the radio stations that it was sent out to, phone numbers, contact information for all of them, and it'll generally say it's either in rotation or haven't gotten a response from them, or a lot of times it'll just say listening, which it's a nice way to say it's probably in a pile of other, at that point, CDs on the PD's desk, and he just hadn't had a chance to listen to it. And sometimes, you would have them that it would say listening for 3, 4, 5 weeks straight with this, one particular program director and particular station. So I started coaching him. I said, Cody, why don't you go ahead and call this, I don't remember what station it was or what program director. I said, give him a call and thank him for spinning the single. That well, he's not. Why would? And I said, just trust me on that. I said, if he admits that he's not been spinning it or whatever, just act like it was a typo or a misunderstanding or what have you, and just go with it and trust me on this. So he did, and of course, the guy was embarrassed by it. I don't remember all the particulars. I don't remember if the PD admitted that he hadn't listened to the record yet or not, but at any rate, he, I guess just as a product of his embarrassment, he went ahead and did an on-air phone interview and played the single. He liked Cody, he liked the single, and I do remember that whoever it was, he did add it to a regular rotation there on the radio station. So he started doing that with all the ones that were listed as listening, and it was just an old trick that I had learned and picked up. And if any of y'all are program directors or work in radio, plug your ears, you didn't hear any of that. But anyhow, so little inside tip there with radio promotions. And the other thing I did is I started picking up the phone and calling both radio PDs as well as, anybody in the music business that I thought could help, venue owners that I knew. Of course, I'd done all these radio tours every time we released a new single or new album with Fowler over the years. Of course, the radio guys would be out at all of our shows, in a given market. So I got to know everybody pretty well for the most part. And the ones that I really knew well and I really had a good relationship with, I just went ahead and called them. And I said, look, I've never asked you for anything, but trust me, this guy's good. It's totally different, and you really need to see his live show, but would you please add him to the rotation. A lot of guys helped out with that, and I was greatly appreciative for that, just trying to get some traction. And the funny part is all that effort created another situation that we kind of almost got into it a little bit with Rick, the radio promoter, about it. Because, of course, the album, the week that the single released, it was like a 109 on the chart. It was way down at the bottom, barely on the chart. Week after week after week, it would jump 4 or 5 spots, and then it would fall back a few spots, and then it would jump. It seemed like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back all the time. Well, finally, this went on for weeks and weeks, and finally we got to where we were bubbling under, which meant it was about to break the top 50. It just kept doing that, and it got down in the 40s and the low 40s, and finally in the high 30s. And at that point, we were about 4.5 months into it, and Rick called. He said, man, if you want me to keep promoting this single, I'm going to have some more money for this. And the agreement or the contract signed to release that was for the life of the single, was the wording that's used. And so he said, it's supposed to be for the life of the single. And he said, yes, but, it's just kind of accepted that the life of a single is about 3 months. And here we're 4.5 months into this, and this thing's still climbing the charts slowly but surely. It's like the little engine that could. So we kind of went back and forth over that and got it all sorted out. And Rick was like, okay, yeah, you're right. I did say life of the single. So he's like, but in the future, if this happens again, we're going to have to rethink all this. But it also, I think it proved to him, he realized that that was not normal. So he realized that, and of course he was talking to these program directors too and getting feedback. So he knew that Cody was making the phone calls and putting in the effort. And so he knew that he was hungry. He knew that he was serious about it, that he wasn't, wasting anybody's time. He wanted to be on the radio, and he wanted, for this thing to work. Of course, as soon as all that stuff started happening, we started, getting some more attention within the industry itself, kind of forging relationships with different people. I remember a guy named Howie, who was actually Roger Krager's business manager at that point in time. Howie started getting involved a little bit, put us on a few gigs in front of Krager and some things like that, and it just kind of started to grow. And of course, another thing too is Roger's old fiddle player, who was a really, really close friend of mine by the name of John Slaughter, who's also a great songwriter, by the way. John lived there in Huntsville, and he and Cody had been friends for quite a time, and they had actually written a couple of songs together that were on that album, including a song that called Pray for Rain that John later recorded and released himself. Of course, later on, I went out and did some shows and tours, and actually went to France one time with John Slaughter later on, once he had recorded and released his version of that song as well. Things just kind of started rolling at that point. After about 8 months or so, it started picking up, and the gigs started getting better. Started getting on to some of the more higher profile gigs, some more of the fairs and festivals, stuff like the Ziegen Boktober Festival, Sam Houston Race Park there in the horse track there in Houston, and some gigs like that. But anyhow, in order to kind of keep this video a little bit short, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that for now. And the next video we'll pick back up here where we left off. I certainly appreciate you watching. Thank you for all the likes and shares and comments and subscribing. And if you have not yet done so, please go down here below, click subscribe, like this video, do all the things, and it helps me to continue to make these videos. And of course, if you need any violin, fiddle, mandolin tracks recorded, let me know. I would love to track some stuff for you. And also, I do violin and fiddle lessons. I can do those remotely. If you're interested in it, I'd love to work with you on that. We can work around your schedule and make it real simple. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and keep on picking.